All right, Jack, you know how this starts. We do a little warm-up exercise first. Today we're doing the Tarzan. Are you ready to beat your breast? Whoa! There we go. That wakes us up. That wakes up the audience. And lets people know that it's time for Leagues Behind, the vodcast of the AGL, where we look behind at the tournaments that have already run to see what we did right, what we should have done differently. I'm your host, Chris York. I'm the founder of the AGL and TO. And today I have with me a very special guest. I have the man of the moment, Jack H., who just made the finals in the Ravnica Adventure League. Is a member of the LC in good standing for a few years now. Runs most of the finals tournaments, and is also, perhaps non-coincidentally, the co-host, the guest. I don't know how you say it in this week's Hunt the Week. So really, this is Jack's week. Made the finals. Interviewed on both podcasts that regularly run for the AGL, and made the finals on top of all that. Where do you find the time, sir? Where do you find the time?
I know it's tough, man. My schedule's booked out pretty far. Everyone wants a piece of me this week, but was fortunate enough to be able to make time today to come on Leagues Behind with my favorite TO.
Well, you're Arena Gauntlet League famous, right? This is like the peak. I don't know if it gets any better than this, man. So this is the hot week to get Jack H on the show. So I figured, why not? And there's a particular reason, right? Because you have a special relationship with today's tournament that we're going to be discussing, as you can see from the set symbol. We're going to be talking about Wilds of Eldraine. We're going to go way, way back in time. All the way back to, what is it, 2023 still? Are we still in 2023? We're just starting 2024 at this time.
Yeah, Wilds was 23.
Yeah, we're wrapping up the 23 series, so we're only 3 years behind. I think there's still enough fodder for this podcast to go, and then we'll start looping into tournaments that we've done leagues ahead for. That's going to be a weird moment for the show. For those who don't know, the Arena Gauntlet League, it's a format of Magic where we basically take sealed pools, we make 60-card decks with them, and then slowly over time add comeback packs on each loss, and until you reach 11 losses, and then you're eliminated. Each tournament has its own particular flavor or special tournament mechanics that are usually related to the set. And Jack is going to walk us through what we did the first time around for Wilds of Eldraine in terms of rules. And maybe, before we get started really on that, you can tell us your special relationship with this as a set for you and why we asked you on today.
Yeah, so Wilds of Eldraine, I was still a fledgling AGL member at this point. This was only my second league here, my first one being Lord of the Rings. And kind of my relation to WoW, maybe my gripe with it, as you'll hear about in a little bit, is I had a very hot start this league, and then kind of crashed and burned in the later part of the weeks, which we'll get into. But being as it was my second tournament here, going on that hot of a tear was something special to me, and then crashing and burning was equally as devastating.
Yeah, so you did better in this league, at least in the beginning, than you did in Lord of the Rings, I guess.
Yeah, my Lord of the Rings league was a very humble 11-11. Nothing special, still getting my feet under me, but I started Wilds of Eldraine League 13-2.
Oof, doesn't get much better than that. Does not get much better than that.
Does not get much better than that. It does get much better than my ending record, which was 17-11. So in weeks 4 through 6, I managed to go 4-9 and not make the top 8. And we'll get into why that is.
You got so close, then the tanks run out of gas, I guess. But we're going to get into that story. Before we get into that story about your personal experience, Jack, can you please talk us through the rule sets? So,
Yeah. So Wilds of Eldraine, it was the start of a new season here at the AGL, and we were hot off of a couple I would say pretty complex league designs with March of Machines and Lord of the Rings. So with Wilds of Eldraine, the league committee at the time, went back to classics This is what I would call probably, a classic league, a standard league, where there were no extra mechanics, and your comeback pack, you just got to choose from either Wilds of Eldraine or one of the last five standard sets. The catch here being that the fifth standard set, which would have been included, Streets of New Capenna, was replaced with original Eldraine for flavor and balance and mechanical reasons.
Yeah. So far, classic Gauntlet League. What could go wrong with that, right? This is just about as vanilla or as French vanilla as you can get with it. Where do the wheels start to fall off here, and what would you have done differently to stop those wheels from falling off? Let's get into the gripes. Let's open the box of gripes.
Yeah, here come my grievances.
Yeah.
So, on paper, this seems pretty simple, straightforward, not really anything too concerning. I guess we should maybe discuss what sets were available.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Obviously,
why, Jack?
What?
But
yeah. Why? I wonder. So, Wilds of Eldraine's obviously a pack choice. You could stay totally unset if you wanted.
Yep. And Eldraine, OG Eldraine for flavor and mechanical reasons. Eldraine. Yep. What else?
And then we had four standard sets. Starting from oldest to newest: Dominaria United, Brothers War, Phyrexia Obi-Wan, and the real boogeyman we need to talk about, March Machines.
Right.
So, being as this was my second league here, I figured this is Wilds of Eldraine League. I should be picking the Wilds of Eldraine packs. It seems pretty logical to me.
In that you thought that if you just take more Wilds of Eldraine, the synergy is going to be better for your deck, and you're sure to win if you just stay on target. And so, to you, like, any offset pack was a trap choice, really.
Right, and even even aside from strength of my deck, it just felt to me like if I'm playing the Wilds of Eldraine League, I should be using Wilds of Eldraine cards. So just continuity of the set kind of made sense to me.
Where does that idea come from, Jack? Though, where does that idea come from? Where did you get that preconceived notion that you should be? I mean, you have as much information as really any player starting up. You have this array of packs open to you, right? I mean, is it just like just attachment to the set itself, or what motivated you to think that way when you started the tournament?
I think honestly, I just didn't really know to think otherwise. Like I didn't even consider it as an option because my only Magic experience before this was my only limited experience was drafting and doing sealed, which is all in one set. And the only other league I had played, Lord of the Rings League, was also a mono set league.
Right.
All the cards in that league were from Lord of the Rings. So to me, it kind of just was a no brainer. Obviously, I'm going to pick the Wilds of Eldraine packs because this is Wilds of Eldraine League, and I didn't even really think otherwise. It just kind of made sense to me that I should be picking Wilds of Eldraine packs in the Wilds of Eldraine League, which of course, looking back on it now.
And yet, some fools opened March of Machines. Some fools.
I know, crazy people, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess herein lies the problem with the classic format this time around. Was March of Machines was, much higher power formatted, had a bonus sheet. A lot of the cards were just stronger on average. And so, the more astute league players kind of went full send March Machines on their comeback packs, which, maybe initially was not paying off. If you mix a couple March Machines packs into your Eldraine pool, it might not do too much at first, but once you get to, 5, 6, 7 March Machines packs and your deck becomes majority March Machines cards, those players were just outclassing all of the players who had picked Eldraine or other packs, just due to the strength of the March Machines itself.
Well, I mean, in the finals, as I recall, wasn't there something like a representation of 6 people that went deep into March Machines and 2 people that were more or less WoW purists?
Yeah, that's right. I believe it was Raph and Zach. So it wasn't just every single person that picked only Wilds of Eldraine packs was just dead out. There were some people that were on the Wilds of Eldraine train that still made a deep run.
Right.
But it was definitely, a lot higher representation of the people that had taken the March of Machines packs up there in the finals and close to it.
So let's get into the crunchy bit of the design, and I suppose what's going to be the core of our discussion on this topic. So, do you think that this is one of the situations where the LC, unintentionally, I believe, created a trap mechanic for players like yourself, and or do you think like so? I guess the broader question is, how much should we leave to player insight and discretion, right? Which is kind of like skill testing in and of itself, and how much should we put up guardrails or handhold, especially new players. When they enter our sort of unique format, and to say give them like do we owe them not only rule sets but also strategic advice as entrance to the tournament series?
Yeah, so I guess I'll say this time in particular, like with the Wilds of Eldraine rule set, I'm not even sure really that like it was a trap necessarily. A large number of people did end up taking March of Machines packs, so it wasn't like only a select few of the spikes kind of identified that as the correct choice. But I think in this case, like having an optimal option that wasn't the onset option kind of just derailed the whole like feeling of a Wilds of Eldraine league. Like at some point, it just became the second March of the Machines league. Which don't get me wrong, March of Machines is it's a great set, but Wilds of Eldraine was kind of sidelined in this tournament by all of the extra packs sneaking in.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the thing that is remembered about this tournament, which, by the way, only had 82 players, so we're still in the time of the league. And before, like, you, Jack, you've been really helpful with, like, getting the Reddit pushes up and helping build the community. At this time, we were just a happy little tournament series, kind of pleasing mostly the hardcore and adding new players at a relatively low rate. Now, let's say, going back to this, right? 82 players in this tournament. You can see that a lot of them are going into the MOM league, right? So there's enough, like, if you look at the pack generation thread, you can kind of tell where people are going, right? You can keep your finger on the pulse and see where things are going. And I think that, the sense is that if this tournament's remembered for anything, and again, I'm talking about the numbers because the numbers of people who are still active on the server of those 82, of course, is less than, I don't know what percentage of people are still active from that group, but people might not recall, the people who do recall this as a league where Wilds of Eldraine was done dirty as a set, right? Where it was really just March of the Machine Part 2, because March of the Machine gets 2 tournaments and Wilds of Eldraine is robbed of its time in the spotlight. To the point that some people are saying, well, let's do as soon as we can, let's do a flashback lead for Wilds of Eldraine and do it right, do it with our sort of modern tournament design principles close in hand, and do something where the core mechanics of the set are highlighted. I'm not necessarily of that mind. I think it might be too soon for a return to Eldraine. But people do mention it now and again as something that's on the to-do list for the LC. Now, given that this might come up sometime in the future, probably later rather than sooner, how would you fix this tournament? How would you make it right?
Yeah, so I think that barring a change in design, right? Like some sort of new design. I think the easiest way to patch this, if it was still desired to be a classic tournament design, we had some success back in our next generation league where it was kind of also that classic design, and again we had flagged like OTJ as the boogeyman, so we just gutted it of its bonus sheets, just to try and take that power down a little. And we still, I think we still had a lot of players picking OTJ, but it definitely helped, I think, to decrease the power of that set in question. So I think that, running it back as is a classic league, just stripping MOM of its bonus sheets it would it would do some justice to WoW and potentially make it more of an option to stay on set. But I'm maybe no surprise, but I'm not that much of a fan of classic leagues. I think they're a little dull. So uh, no offense to the LC at the time, but yeah, I think we can do better.
Yeah.
So
Well, my sense was
you know,
the LC at the time skewed conservative, right? There was a sense of like, we have this formula, we know it works, people like it, and there was a sense that we had there's this pendulum that swung from very complex tournament offerings like, March of the Machines, where you're in a multiverse and planes are collapsing and sets are becoming unavailable. And then Lord of the Rings, which was one of our, what we call a saga league, where each week had its own thematic set of stipulations. There was a sense that people might be tired after that. So in the LC's defense, the pendulum had swung back to the simple stuff, and maybe people were just exhausted after running those tournaments, and were like, "Come on, let's just have a vanilla or French vanilla league." And there are some people that call for it, right? I agree with you, and I think that's probably one of the good things, is that we can see that we can do so much more now than we could 3 years ago, and that's largely due to the talents and the volunteering efforts of the LC, right, in sort of making the technologies that enable more ambitious tournament designs. Yeah, I mean, and I also think if we went back to this, it's not a matter of just like nerfing or excluding strong sets, right? Like taking out bonus sheets and depowering. It's like, I don't think that we're wedded to standard anymore. The way that it used to work is when we ran out of a physical store, we played with real packs. And the real packs that were cheapest and available were the last few sets. And so they were there, they were cheap, and we basically contained League within that range so that it wasn't like a spending war. So people wouldn't be
right.
like opening up Masters or, Modern Horizons or whatever was available at the time, right? That would have blown everybody else out of the water. Or, right, looking at packs that go way back and would have been expensive to procure, right? Like original Innistrad or something. So it was a bit that now we're freed from that restriction in a lot of ways. Wild card concerns excluded from the equation. I think, we could go back and situate Eldraine within. I mean, if we just kept it vanilla or French vanilla, if we decided to go that way, we'd probably keep it in a number of sets that were probably lower powered than Wilds of Eldraine, or similarly powered, but also thematically related, right? Maybe keep in the original Eldraine, maybe put in Bloomburrow, maybe put in Lorwyn or other sets that kind of like play around with that kind of like fairy tale flavor space, right? And say, okay, this is we're pitching this as a kind of aesthetic package, and March of the Machine has nothing to do with that aesthetic package, really. So that's one way to go. Could you imagine a more ambitious tournament redesign, though? Like, so let's say that we wanted to get more. You said we could do better things than just go vanilla or French vanilla. And I think that, if we go from vanilla or French vanilla, we just change the surrounding sets. We're not wedded to standard. If you want to get more ambitious, do you have any ideas on that vein?
Yeah, so you mentioned Bloomburrow as kind of a set that's, you know, loosely it's got the same vibes as well as Eldraine. It's very like storybook fantasy, not super dark and twisted or anything like that. We're not talking Dustborn here.
Yeah.
So,
Which, by the way, was
and
one of your GOAT tournament designs, right? The Duskmorn tournament will be remembered. We'll get to it eventually. It leaves behind, but I just want to give a shout out to the mechanic that was great for Duskmorn, but also kind of made a return for Player of the Year, 2025. Go back, look at the rule set if you haven't. It was a fun one. The dread
it was
mechanic.
a good one.
But yeah, moving on. So it's not spooky, not scary, not terrifying, not gory, right? Pastoral kind of landscapes and funny, fuzzy creatures playing
Yeah, exactly.
therein.
And what we ended up doing for the Bloomburrow tournament design, right, was we had, there were the 10 animal factions, and so it mapped well to our 10 losses. And what we had was each loss, you would receive a boon from one of the animals, and you had a choice of three. They were randomized each time, and they would give you some sort of special effect along with a pack. Like if you had the bat boon, you got a pack of LCI, and you also got two map tokens, which you could use to reroll a future pack.
Right.
So nothing like too game breaking, but it was good flavor. We wrote some little story quips for all of the animals, which was fun, and give the players a little bit of agency there that, they can kind of choose the path they take, the boons, and kind of tie in some unique mechanics that weren't super complicated or anything like that. I think something like that would fit pretty well for Wilds of Eldraine, where it's kind of this storybook fantasy set. There's a lot of lore we can pull from. We have some great creative minds on the LC that I'm sure would love to write some Eldraine stories out, and then just have some sort of like path mechanic. Something small, nothing too crazy, but just give the players a little bit of agency to choose, but kind of tie it all back into like the story of Eldraine, which I feel like is kind of the main thematic factor of the set.
Yeah, I mean, there's different things you can do, right? You could have it set out like a storybook and say each week is like a chapter, I guess, in that kind of way, and have different stipulations or restrictions or whatever. And you could tie them, I think, even though it was more the original Eldraine than the Wilds of Eldraine, you could tie each week to one of at least weeks 1 to 5 to each of the courts, right? Like the knights each had their sort of like monocolored thing going on, so you could have like different bonuses for decks of those colors or whatever for each week, so that every week has its own, puts a spotlight on a certain subset of cards in everybody's pool. And let's say, for example, like you have all your bombs are in green, you're going to dominate that week, but then when it comes to the week where you have to run all your black cards or whatever, maybe you're out of luck. Right, so that could be interesting, I think, to play around in that space, for example. And that might feel more Eldraine-y, right? That might feel more like it does justice to the setting, does justice to the lore, and maybe would be a more fitting tournament. Yeah, so I think you've convinced me that there was a missed trick here. If I wasn't already convinced, I mean, I set it up like I played a bit of Tell me, Jack, what could we possibly improve about this tournament? But this was known. I wouldn't say it was known as a stinker. It was a perfectly passable tournament for what it was worth, and people there was a debate and there was a tension in the community about like, should I pick Wilds of Eldraine? Should I pick March of the Machines? And that was a live debate for the first weeks of the tournament, right? And people made the finals with all Wilds of Eldraine decks, and so that's a live question, right? And maybe there's not enough matches to have sort of statistic proof that it was absolutely the right call to select March of the Machine packs, right? 2 people who just chose Wilds of Eldraine made the finals. But at the same time, it's enough to say, generally speaking, there was a strong sense that it was the dominant choice in the tournament. So that was a missed trick, let's say. Right, even though it was a fine tournament, and that debate in itself gives the tournament its lore or its sort of like moment in our collective memory, it was a missed trick, and that probably could have done something that was more sensitive to the plane. And I do feel like we're doing a better and better job at making the mechanics relate to the setting. Now, given that part of what we do here on Leagues Behind is we talk about tournament design from the retrospective point of view. Should we tease anything about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to get people excited about the future, or should we just keep mum about that? I don't know. What are we doing to do that flavor justice?
Yeah, we're doing our best. We'll say that. Yeah, it's this one's. I guess we could tease a little bit. Maybe people will.
I mean, if you listen to at least the half-hour point, you want to be paid off, right? Let's pay off our viewers.
Give people a little bit of a tease. Yeah. So, I guess maybe a fun spoiler for this one. We've just finished up our Avatar League where we had a cut down the middle, right? We had 4 weeks of individual play, Chosen's Combat hit, and then we had 2 weeks of team play, right? And a lot of people kind of enjoyed the split. It gave people something to fight for. If you're at 8 and 10, normally you got no shot, but just make it to 10 and 10, you get your team and everything. So I would say nothing's locked in yet, but we are considering doing something similar for TMNT, where instead of running a full 6-week league, a full 6-week league, that we have 3-week league, and then there's some sort of cut, and then we have another 3-week league that's interconnected with each other.
Right. And I guess I've already teased this in the league crafting channel, but there's going to be some mechanic where basically the contents of the pack will be mutated, right? So if you can shift some of your pack away and get it replaced with something else, and there might be another kind of mutation of your pool when you enter from one end of the tournament to the other. So I think that this addresses a couple of things in terms of like our desire to match leagues to flavors, and also kind of like iterate on previous successes and avoid previous, let's say, flops, right? So let's go back to our last couple of Universes Beyond leagues. The sense was that Spider-Man League was a stinker, right? Not the league itself necessarily, but the set was a stinker, and that kind of bled over into the league experience. And after 6 weeks of playing Spider-Man, or through the Omen Paths as we played it, right? The sense was that, gosh, why couldn't we have cut this up differently or done something? Again, it was a missed trick, right? And we just weren't aware ahead of time, because Wizards doesn't release the full spoiler usually too far in advance of the cards being available in the client. So we acted in good faith. These cards are going to be able to sustain 6 weeks of interesting play for our players. Obviously, we can't lay back on the same assumption for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We've learned our lesson with Spider-Man. And I think that Jordan brought that lesson forward into Avatar, right? He said, look, this is another Universes Beyond property. We're going to need to do something different here in order to, make people feel reassured about entering into the tournament. Things are going to have to be different. And so I think he did a really good job of weaving the lore into each week's mechanics, sort of representing the flavor, and then sort of breaking it down into this dramatic and new kind of 2 weeks of finals, right? So I think that's good. That's exciting. This is something different, right? I'd say it's probably iteration in the same space, but you're not forced to enter into a team league right at the end, because I think that was probably, if people had any issues with the tournament design of Avatar, it was probably that they felt that it was a bit disconnected, right? They were leaning on their individual records for 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden, hey, you're in a group with some people that you didn't choose, right? You're just assigned a team, and good luck to you for the last 2 weeks of the holidays. So I think that this might address both sets of problems, right? In that there's two tournaments connected together in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they're kind of not radically different formats from each other, right? So it's still recognizable. And it also doesn't let things sit for 6 weeks like Spider-Man did. So I do think this is, again, we're going a little bit into Leagues Ahead territory. That'll probably be the next episode, is Leagues Ahead for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And we're going to talk with probably Steven for that one, since this seems to be his baby. But I guess that's our spoilage for people who are into this, for the spoilers. So, Jack, anything else to say, going back to our original topic about the Wilds of Eldraine League? Is there any other commentary, maybe stories, any more salt that you want to spill on the experience?
I've spilled my salt enough times. No use, bashing on it too much. But I guess I'll just say, you mentioned some people calling for Wilds of Eldraine flashback. I'm definitely in that camp, so stay tuned in the future. Hopefully, I'll be able to convince the rest of the LC why we should flashback some Wilds of Eldraine and do it some justice. So, if you do want to see, Wilds of Eldraine flashback come to an AGL near you, make sure to go in league crafting. Tell us what you want it to look like.
Jack, we got to do Jumpstart League before we get back to Wilds of Eldraine.
Our course flashback.
And our core set flashback league. Do those sets justice. Then we'll come back. We'll circle back. I think those are due before we get to Wilds of Eldraine again. I mean, part of the thing about, remember the basically the double Eldraine league that we had? I don't know if you were around for that one. but that we returned to the well too soon after the original Eldraine set had dropped, and it was the sense like, well, why, why are we doing this? That was also not necessarily the most exciting league that we did. But let me try again to not only try to promote my hobby horses of the fictional but hopefully imminent Jumpstart League and Corset League, but also say like some of these issues that we've had with leagues behind is that the LC is just trying their best to keep up with and not react to course changes from the designers of the game, right? So Wizards of the Coast, changes things up. And back in Wilds of Eldraine, I think that we just moved from draft boosters to play boosters, or the sets were juiced. Like Mom was such a juiced set that it was like a precursor to a play booster, and we didn't quite know how the needle had jumped or was going to jump, or how permanent that jump was going to be in terms of sets being juiced or power crept in the future. So I think we were still getting our heads around that. And I mean, now, for example, just having finished up Ravnica Adventure League, you can see, looking at those old packs and playing that tournament in the old format, you can see how underpowered by today's standards everything was, right? How everything was sold at a bad rate to the players. Like, cards are way overpriced by today's standards for what they do. Things just look janky and weird and slow. And it's kind of fun going back and playing with those old draft boosters. But it also reminds us, like, there was a time when that was normal, right? And where you're lucky to get one or two bomb rares that would change everything for you if you drew them, right? And the rest of it was just like, it was like crawling through the mud to try to get a victory with these underpowered cards. So now I think there is some division. I think for some people they're going to identify that as March of the Machine, right, where things changed forever. What do you think of that? I mean, so again, this is kind of a limited defense. I know that we spent a lot of time saying, "Oh, this is obvious in retrospect, right? We should have eliminated March of Machines." But in the LC's defense from that time, maybe this is something that we couldn't see coming, and we hadn't played with Wilds of Eldraine cards yet, so we didn't know. Like, if Power Creep was projected to keep going up, maybe there's no reason to expect that Wilds of Eldraine would be relatively underpowered compared to March of the Machine. So, especially when you start with a base set of 6, Wilds of Eldraine packs, right? It kind of makes you think that there's probably some power in sticking on brand and in benefiting from that synergy. It wasn't, again, it was a puzzle that we solved as a group as the tournament progressed. I'm not sure it was an issue that the LC could have perfectly predicted and prevented.
Yes, I definitely see your point that March of Machines being like such a juice set in comparison to its recent predecessors does leave the question, like, are all the sets going to be like this? Is Wilds of Eldraine going to be the next March of Machines? It had a bonus sheet.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I wasn't around.
That bonus sheet didn't tear things up, I don't think, though, did it?
No, not at all.
No one was saying the problem with Wilds of Eldraine League was that you left the bonus sheet in. Quite the contrary.
Well, it might be a problem for the wrong reason. I keep opening these garbage enchantments.
Right.
I wasn't around before this, but I've heard from some older members in the tournament that that the league has kind of had like these like boogeyman scares before, notably with like Ikoria and Strixhaven, being kind of power outliers for their time. But it wasn't. I don't think it was really to this extreme, and I think actually in the case of Strixhaven, the people that were taking it actually performed worse.
Yes.
Despite its perceived power advantage over more recent sets. So I think there is some way to consider there is that, like, hey, we've had these discussions in the past. We've had these sets that look like power outliers with like Ikoria and Strixhaven, and it didn't end up being much of a problem. And so
that's right.
This might not be as big an issue, right? We had those sets in the past, and they didn't cause much of a hullabaloo. Unfortunately for us, yeah, March Machines was was not like that and did cause some problems. So I don't want to, of course, point fingers and say, "Wow, the LC did such a horrible job here." Like, it's of course, in hindsight, like you mentioned, we can say, yeah, it would have been better if we had excluded March Machines. But I think at the time it was definitely, you know, understandable mistake to make.
Yeah.
That, and especially with the gigantic spike in power level of March Machines compared to all of you wanted Brothers War, as us before that, it was just a question mark of like, is this the new standard?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're absolutely right. That's an excellent point, Jack. I mean, it's a bit like the player base that cried wolf, right? There were sort of like complaints about previous sets, and those were proven to be unjustified. Then we're like, well, surely this set, is going to be equally good as all the other sets, and not overpower, not destroy our meta. Because at a certain point, I guess we just have to trust in the designers of the game to do it right. And I do think like this debate that it's sort of it's a perennial debate, I would say, that springs up now and again. Sometimes it's entire sets. People say this set's too juiced. Sometimes it's particular cards, right? Some people think, well, this one card in the set is going to upset everything for our tournament series, and we should preemptively ban it. I'm always of the mind that, well, since we're starting to use the cards usually at the same time as everybody else in the world, that we shouldn't presume to have any sort of special knowledge or insight in how this is going to work out. And if there is a bomb or a set of bombs in a set, there's probably also the solutions to those bombs, hopefully in the same set or an adjacent set that we have access to. That's my sense, right? And again, one of my mottos in terms of tournament design is to let people play with their toys, right? So if we have a couple of juiced cards, my sense is that if you open those Willy Wonka, lotto tickets, then enjoy them, right? Not everybody's going to open them, and that's part of the joy of sealed, right? And if we shouldn't necessarily, I don't know. Like, for example, if I want to open up a chocolate bar, I wouldn't want anyone to go in and take out all or half of the sugar before I bite in. I'd be like, come on, I know this is bad for me, but God damn it, I want the potential to have a tasty bite here somewhere. And I think it's the same with these packs that we're opening, right? If we take all the flavor out, if we take all the juice out before if we have a sort of weak, faint copy of the power level of the set in the wild, so to speak, as it would be opened in play boosters, I do think we're robbing the player base of some potential range of experience that the designers of the game intended should be there, right? And I think at some point we do have to trust their instincts, even though their instincts, as we've seen with Spider-Man, for example, aren't infallible. It is their full-time job, and they probably do have at least a modicum of insight that's a bit deeper than ours as the committee for running a niche format within that fan base for that game, right?
I'd like to think so.
We hope. We hope.
We hope, yeah.
How do you, where do you stand on this issue, Jack, of the preemptive banning or the sort of like the sky is falling reaction to new sets that are perceived to be juiced a priori before experience with them?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really like modifying the contents of a set. I know there was a lot of complaints, like going back to Spider-Man, about Wrench being pretty oppressive, not fun. Like I really don't think we should ever be taking the stance of banning cards out of a set or modifying the base set anyway. I don't really like that.
Right. I think Wrench is Wrench, and we learned that it's a powerful card, and some people benefited from having Wrench, and some people suffered from playing against Wrench, and that's just part of the story of playing that set, I think, right?
Yeah. As far as like juiced sets go, right? So I think the Wilds of Eldraine tournament, it did kind of teach us a lesson here that there is like some guardrails that need to be put up if we ever do want to have this standard league again. And right, I think kind of two sets since then have raised red flags, being OTJ and Final Allows of Thunder Junction and Final Fantasy, kind of also raising those red flags of like, hey, this is a power outlier. If we ever want to include it in a tournament offering going forward, we need to be careful about it. And we have, right? We've had, like I mentioned, the Next Generation League, which gutted OTJ of its bonus sheets completely. We'll sometimes include them as a one-off pack, like you get, this pack from a story loss, but it's not something you can just take every loss. So I think we've definitely kind of learned a lesson from this tournament and, March of Machines taking over is that, when we do have a set like that, that does seem to be a power outlier like Outlaws of Thunder Junction or Final Fantasy, that it's just, we need to be cautious kind of throwing it in and tournaments going forward. We can't really just go willy-nilly with it and completely take over another set with it.
Yeah, and I think like I guess I'm of the mind that like the packs and the sets that we have available to us are a bit like spices, and each tournament is a bit like a dish, and you don't want every spice in every dish. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I mean if we curated a sort of meta for Wilds of Eldraine, right, we'd be more selective in the packs that we chose, the comeback packs that we chose to be available in the run of that tournament, because we have access to all these spices. And I mean, in the longer that our tournament series runs and the longer that Arena exists and adds more sets to the client, the better dishes we can prepare for our players, presumably.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think we're kind of, like you mentioned earlier, the standard league was something that was, or the classic league format was something that was kind of based on paper. And we're not really tied to that anymore. And, I'd like to think that the LC these days definitely has, more refined tournament designs. But if you think otherwise, feel free to ping me in League Crafting and tell me I suck at league design and I should get out of here. But yeah, I definitely think that we kind of have, the knowledge and the experience of designing tournaments, and we kind of do a better job with not letting these things kind of sneak in.
Okay, I'm gonna maybe try to get you with one more sort of novel question and see what your response is. This is unrehearsed and untested, Jack. So here we go. This is a little bit off topic, but I think it's worth the walk. Recently, I looked online and I realized that we were only 50 cards off on the Arena client from having a complete Arena Powered Cube set. We're missing the power, of course, from the Powered Cube, but it's something like Legacy Light or Masters, not Masters, a modern level of power that we could be having in terms of a cube on the client feeding maybe a 3-week event. I pitched this, and it did get a little bit of traction, but it also got a little bit of pushback in terms of, hey, I don't know. I mean, it sounds neat in concept, a completely power-juiced league, but who could afford it in terms of wild cards, right? So there's a couple questions here for you. One is, what do you think of a league that's designed from the onset and from the outset to be really powerful, right? We normally design leagues to be weak at the start and then slowly ramp up into something more powerful in week 6. What do you think? So question 1, what do you think about a league that's just designed to be powerful from day 1 of play, where you're just playing with busted stuff out the gates? Second question, how much do you think that we should be designing around a random hypothetical player's access to wildcards? Should we let that hinder our potential suite of designs, or should we just design agnostically of the resources that people have or don't have?
I'll answer your second question first, actually.
Sure.
So,
it's probably the easier one, right?
Yeah. So I think that in general, it's good to kind of keep it in mind while we're designing that, players have limited resources here. New players might not have played previous sets. So when we, something like OTJ League, for example, where we had this store and you could buy packs, like a lot of players ended up having to take offset packs, and that was definitely taxing on wild cards. I think it's something to consider.
But that was still a very successful tournament mechanic, I think. And I think
right.
that during that league, I just heard the excitement of being able to get all these offset packs. I didn't hear anyone, or at least no one that I remember, bellyaching about wildcards during Outlaws of Thunder Junction League.
Yeah, I think the thing is it's something to keep in mind. It's not a catch-all where wildcard usage should stop us from doing anything. Like you mentioned, the OTJ tournament was quite popular. The mechanic was cool, and even if players did end up having to take a lot of offset cards, like may burn through some of their wild cards. Like I think that the design of the tournament was cool and unique enough that it was something that was okay.
Right.
Now, I think for like you mentioned, a 3 week league, this would have to be a 3 week. There's absolutely no way this could be a 6 week league.
It would get degenerate pretty quickly, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will start degenerate and it'll get worse. So for a 3 week league, I think it's less of a consideration because again, like it's less time. We're usually more experimental with 3 week leagues,
Right.
and if there's wildcard concerns, like it's less of a drag to have to sit one out if it's only 3 weeks versus 6 weeks.
Gotcha.
Now, circling back to Power Cube League specifically, where the kind of the whole intent of the league is like juice, juice, juice. Like decks start good and they get better.
Yeah.
I personally am against the idea. I think part of the charm of League for me is having to start scrappy and kind of really seeing that progression as the league goes on. Like, having, 60 cards sealed with 6 packs is tough. Like, you're going to play some junk or you're going to play 4 colors or something, right? And I think Power Cube League would take the fun out of it for me. Like, it wouldn't have that same charm of like, my deck is really bad and I'm just scrapping against other really bad decks in the first week. It's like, well, my deck's like has 37 bombs and like 3 infinite combos, and then when I open my packs, I got like a 4th infinite combo. Like, it doesn't draw to me the same way a normal league does. But I get that definitely some people would enjoy it. I just think it wouldn't be for me.
Right. To me, I suppose, like, yeah, I agree with you. The baseline for the league is it's a bit like an RPG or something, right? Where you start off and you have no armor and maybe just a wooden sword and a leather shield, and you build out from there until you have like level 10 armor and a sword on fire that shoots magical spells out the end, right? And that's the sort of hero's journey that anybody who makes it to week 6 normally goes on. And I wouldn't argue for replacing that as a baseline. But I do think this is a knob that we can turn now and again to make special, exciting one-off leagues. And to me, I do agree, like, it probably does fit better in a 3-week league, especially if it's, again, we're more experimental in 3-week leagues. It hurts less to sit one out. And we normally see the more invested player base take part in 3-week leagues, right? And we see, like, the sort of the normal set release ones draw in the new players, like, for example, I don't know how much of a draw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is going to be, but for example, like the Ravnica Adventure League had 131 players, and I think that we're sitting at around 230, right? Is that right for the current league? Right?
Yeah.
Which I'm not doing very well in at all. So I try to forget at the end of the week that we're in Lorwyn. I just try to forget the name Lorwyn. I'm right now I'm sitting at 2-8. It is not a good league for me. I'm enjoying the cards. I'm enjoying the set. I like the games that I play. But I will say that, like, going from Lorwyn deck to Shadowmoor deck is like going from bad to worse right now.
Hey, you've leveled up. You've got your chainmail armor and maybe a nice iron sword now.
Yeah, maybe I'll come back strong in week 3. Who the hell knows? But anyway, the point being, you got the number count for Lorwyn Eclipse League?
Yeah, it's 223.
Right, so that's 223. So we see just from that metric, right, that you have like roughly double the players in a 6-week league as we'll see in a 3-week league. And I think that's a rule that has stayed constant, even though the numbers have gone up on both metrics, right? So yeah, for me, like this remains something enticing and interesting. I don't know if really what I'm pitching to you today, Jack, is a bunch of ideas for this upcoming 3-week league that we have. We have one spot this year, and it's in June. So 4 months down the line, we're going to be playing this league. We don't know what we're going to do with it yet. Could be Wilds of Eldraine remastered. Could be core set. Work the core. It could be Jumpstart. Could be Arena Powered Cube Lite League. Who the hell knows? But so we're still trying to sort of throw around ideas, and that's very much where my mind is right now. Like just filling out the last empty spot in the calendar for 2026 play season. So yeah, Jack, thanks for your insight and your discussion. It's a good chat as always. I think we come to the end of the line for this episode, unless you want to have any last words. It's good to offer the guests the last word.
Last words. Yeah, I mean, of course, you're talking about all these ideas for a 3-week league, but of course, anyone listening, we've got league crafting. You got ideas for a 3-week league that are better than ours? Feel free to tell us.
Yeah.
We always hear input and getting ideas from people. So
that's what it's for, and that's very magnanimous of you to give the last word to the viewing audience. That's what the channel's for. If you can craft your own league or critique the leagues that we've crafted there, keep the discussion going. Even though we're having this public discussion, by no means do we have the ultimate say on what's right and what's good. Get in there and debate in the forums on the Discord. Jack, thanks again for joining us. Keep up the hot streak you're on as a player, and keep on the good side of design that you've always been doing throughout. So yeah, thanks for everything, Jack, and talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Bye for now. And I think we are finally clear.